Some breaking news we're getting right now from West Asia. The Palestinian media is reporting that US President Donald Trump has informed Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas that he plans to move the US embassy to Jerusalem. It will be a major move, and how does it impact the peace process is something that we'll have to see. Remember, this was one of Donald Trump's election promises. He said that he is going to move the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. If he indeed walks the talk, America will be the first country to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and this is going to impact the peace process. Donald Trump has also promised what he calls the ultimate deal for peace in West Asia. His son-in-law and top advisor Jared Kushner has been working towards achieving that, and reports say that he was not in favor of moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. This is according to Palestinian media reports, which say that Donald Trump has finally arrived at the decision. When he traveled to Israel earlier this year, there was a lot of speculation and anticipation that he is going to announce that decision. Instead, what he did was extremely controversial and something that did not go down very well with Israel. He visited the Western Wall. He kept mum on his promise, and he's not going to be the first president who has broached the idea. Remember, George W. Bush and Bill Clinton too have discussed the idea of moving Jerusalem, moving their embassy to Jerusalem, but eventually decided against it. This is a new president in the White House, and he's been very vocal about what he feels. Remember, his son-in-law and daughter are both practicing Orthodox Jews. The Jewish lobby wields a lot of influence in Washington, and this is going to be a huge win for them. Although many European countries, including permanent members of the UN Security Council, have been saying that this move is going to be counterproductive. Joining me live from the newsroom is my colleague Ramesh Ramachandran. Ramesh, what have we picked up from the Palestinian media so far?
Well, Palki, this is what we know so far, and this is coming via the Palestinian news outlet Wafa, which Reuters and AP are quoting. It says a readout of President Trump's telephone call with President Mahmoud Abbas of Palestine. And according to him, Trump has conveyed his intention to move the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. We don't know what that exactly means. Is it going to happen immediately or sometime in the future? That's still a point worth considering. But the fact remains that Trump, according to reports, has conveyed his intention to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. All of this comes at a time when Saudi Arabia, France, Jordan, Turkey all have expressed concerns over the fallout or the repercussions or the consequences of this decision. And it remains to be seen whether Trump actually goes ahead with his decision of moving the embassy to Jerusalem or not.
Indeed, and this is going to have consequences. The French President Emmanuel Macron has spoken against it. So have senior officials and members of the German government. But what's also important to note, Ramesh, is the fact that Jared Kushner, who is the key figure in West Asian affairs in Washington, is also believed to be against this move.
Well, Palki, if I heard you correct, you're talking about Jared Kushner's moves in West Asia as far as the peace process is concerned. We've seen even in such previous administrations, especially under Obama administration, when the then Secretary of State and others were busy with ensuring or trying to forge a peace between Israel and Palestine, that proved futile. And this is another attempt by the Trump administration to forge some kind of an understanding between Israel and Palestine. But that said, Palestinians are very clear. There are three clear demands. One, that East Jerusalem has to be the capital of a future Palestine state, number one. Number two, that the 1967 borders have to be respected and established on the ground between Israel and Palestine. And three, the right of return of Palestinian refugees back to Israel. So these three are the red lines as far as Palestinians go. But that said, it remains to be seen whether Palestinians will actually, how they will react going forward if indeed Trump decides to go ahead with the decision to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Yes, and the local media are quoting the spokesperson for Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, saying that Donald Trump in a telephonic conversation informed the Palestinian president about his intention to move the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. This is going to have an impact, as we've been saying, consequences for the peace talks. And this comes at a very interesting time, just weeks after the so-called rapprochement between Hamas and Fatah. And we were seeing a political restructuring happening, as it were, in Palestine. Joining us is Lior Weinstraub, former diplomat, on the phone line with us from Jerusalem. Lior, what are you picking up on the ground? Do we have a date? Do we have a timeline that the U.S. president is talking about? He had a telephonic conversation with Mahmoud Abbas.
Well, I believe this is a long-awaited development and a very positive development. I mean, Jerusalem has been the capital of Israel for 70 years now, and for, I would say, historic misjustice, it's been not recognized, or the embassy was not placed in Jerusalem. So I think the fact that the Trump administration is signaling now that he is intended to obey the American law and cancel the waiver and recognize Jerusalem as the eternal and undivided capital of Jerusalem is a very positive development. I don't know about the timeline. This is just, it's breaking now, and my understanding is that we'll see a speech by President Trump either on Wednesday or Thursday, and he will announce his policy then. But I think it's also a major and positive development to the prospect of the renewal of the peace process in the Middle East.
The Americans already have a diplomatic presence in Jerusalem, and I understand your point of view when you say that this is a positive development. Developments very, very significant symbolically, but the Europeans, as much as people in West Asia, are saying that this is going to be counterproductive when it comes to the peace deal. Would you agree?
Well, I'll tell you what is counterproductive. In the last 8 or almost 10 years, we didn't see any development on the ground or any kind of development in the negotiation between Israel and the Palestinians. The Palestinians did not come to the table in the last 8 years during the Obama administration. And I think this is doesn't make sense to give the Palestinian, to let the Palestinian leadership crisis and the Palestinian intransigence give a veto over Israeli standing in the world, over its relationship with its best friend in the world, the United States. So I think the fact that something is moving now, it's also a major signal to the Palestinians that if they'll come to the table, they have something to earn as well. Now, it needs to say that there is a bipartisan support in the United States by Republican and Democrats to this move, including Minority Leader Senator Chuck Schumer, and there's also wall-to-wall support in Israel. I mean, the Israeli political system is even more divided than the Indian one. And there's one thing, there are a few things the Israelis agree upon, and this is Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and that the embassy should move. And I see it as a positive signal. I really think this can be something that will motivate both sides to come to the table and talk peace, as all of us want to see.
All right, Lior Weinstraub, thanks very much for joining us. Dr. Mordechai Kedar from the Bar-Ilan University from Israel also joining us. Dr. Kedar, your first reaction, and what have you heard about Donald Trump finally making his decision? He said it in the past. We haven't seen him do it.
Well, before we talk about Trump, we should remind everybody that a month ago, Vladimir Putin, have you heard about this man? Vladimir Putin announced that he recognizes the western part of Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Israel. So, and I didn't hear any problem with the Palestinians. I didn't hear problems with the Arabs or the Muslims or anyone in the world. And all of a sudden, when Trump wants to say...
But Putin hasn't moved the embassy to Jerusalem, has he?
Very, very strange. And really not serious. However, the Palestinians are the funniest people here in the world. They never had a Palestinian state. They never had a capital. So why do they want the Israeli, the Jewish capital, which is our capital for 3,000 years already? What do they want? To take our hearts out of our body? This is what they want, to destroy Israel altogether? And we suspect that this is what they want. So now they are outraged because Putin a month ago and Trump maybe tomorrow actually support the existence of the state of Israel as a state of the Jews as it was already 3,000 years ago with Jerusalem as its capital. I really don't understand what is their problem.
Right. I understand it's a very emotional subject for you. Thanks very much, Dr. Kedar, for joining us from Tel Aviv. Ramesh, the Palestinians have been saying that they are going to break diplomatic ties with any country that recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. But the Palestinians have very limited options. Their best bet were the Arab countries who are also siding, it seems, with Israel to form an alliance against Iran. Where does this leave Palestine?
Well, clearly, Palestinians have a tough task on their hands, Palki. But in the last few minutes, we've heard from the spokesperson, Nabil Abu Dana, of President Mahmoud Abbas, issuing a statement. And if I can just quote him, it says, President Mahmoud Abbas received a telephone call from U.S. President Donald Trump in which he notified the President Abbas, it means, of his intention to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The statement goes on to say that President Abbas warned of the consequences, the dangerous consequences such a decision would have to the peace process and to the peace, security and stability of the region and of the world. This is coming from the spokesperson of President Mahmoud Abbas.
Indeed, this is the latest that we are picking up from Palestine. This is a conversation that he had, and this is something that we've heard in the past from Donald Trump. He keeps changing his mind, so it isn't really a done deal just yet, but the Israelis, interestingly, Ramesh, see Donald Trump as their best bet in pushing the Israeli agenda in Washington. They have a lot of clout, but this is a president who's come after 8 years of the Obama administration, and President Obama and the Israeli Prime Minister weren't on the best of terms, to say the least.
Absolutely, Palki. The question, which is agitating many minds around the world at the moment would be, will and can Trump succeed where Obama failed? And that, to my mind, is a key question to answer at this point in time. We've seen Obama try for 8 years without much success. And now Trump has Kushner and others working other channels to have some sort of an understanding of modus vivendi between Israel and Palestine. And this decision may not go down well with many of the U.S. allies in the region and beyond, Palki. We've heard from Saudi Arabia, from France, from Jordan, from Turkey. All have expressed concerns over the consequences, the repercussions, the fallout of moving the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. This at a time when Palestinians say they have 3 red lines. One, that East Jerusalem has to be the capital of a future Palestine state, number one. Number two, that the right of return of refugees should be guaranteed and respected. And 3, the 1967 borders have to be adhered to. So these are the red lines which Palestinians say must be adhered to and respected. But the decision to move the embassy would, many say, would have catastrophic consequences for peace in the region and beyond. But that said, Palki, Martin Indyk, a former U.S. Special Envoy, has suggested in his op-ed to publish in a section of the American media yesterday that if at all Trump decides to go ahead with this decision, in that case, he should also insist that East Jerusalem shall be the capital of the future Palestine state. Now, that remains to be seen whether Trump will insist on that or not.
Right. Arsen Ostrovsky, international human rights lawyer, also a senior representative of the Israeli Jewish Congress, with us on the phone line. Arsen, we've been speaking about this. We had a discussion yesterday, and you said there is no wrong time to do the right thing. This is the best time, and this should be done. And it seems the White House is going to come up with an official statement very soon on this.
Yeah, correct, Park. It looks like all reports indicating that President Trump has informed President Abbas of his intention to move the embassy and therefore recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital, noting also that the official embassy waiver expired yesterday. With that being said, I think we still need to wait until we get the final details, which should be forthcoming, if not this evening, then in the next 24 hours, when the President is due to make a formal statement after consulting with the leaders. But from Israel's perspective, like I said, there is never the wrong time to do the right thing. From Israel's side, this really would be a sense of correcting a long overdue injustice. Israelis consider Jerusalem our eternal undivided capital. So this would be a powerful show, not just to the Palestinians, showing to them a message that no longer will the United States abide by the threats and intimidation, but also correcting this injustice in which Israel has been the only country under international law which ought to be able to designate its capital, but has not been allowed to do so.
Thanks very much, Arsen, for joining us. Also with us from Tel Aviv live this evening, Mayor Javed Anfar, Middle East analyst. Mayor, I know I'm speaking to an Israeli, but I can't help asking, is this really the best decision?
To be honest with you, this is something that Israelis all want, but it's not on the top priority list for many Israelis. If you look at all the elections, for example, the last election we had in Israel on March 17, 2015, that issue wasn't even on the top 3 or top 4. The high cost of living, the socio-economic issue was the most important issue. So I think although ideally many Israelis would love the idea that the United States would recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, first of all, it's not on the priority list. And second of all, if it's not done as part of a bilateral process with the Palestinians, however difficult it may be, it may actually create problems for us in terms of our relations with countries such as Jordan, who are very important security partners, and also create instability in the Middle East in terms of demonstrations in other countries. So although the intention is good and many Israelis would back it, I'm not so sure right now is the best time, and especially unilaterally doing it while shunning the Palestinians completely would serve Israel's interest at the moment.
Right. Mayor, thanks very much. I'm out of time on this, but this is the big breaking news that we are bringing our viewers this evening. Donald Trump is going to make it official, the announcement of moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, an official statement expected from the White House any minute now. We're wrapping up this edition of Gravitas.